Hi there. We are a little bit over halfway through this season, so small programming reminder. The next book is Song of Susanna. However, in between this season and that season, we are going to be covering Bag of Bones and From a Buick 8. So if you want to pick those up and help out the show, consider going to Duckfeed.tv/tipjar and using the Amazon link there to buy the book in whatever form, digital, physical, audio, all of that. Once again, that is Duckfeed.tv/tipjar. Welcome to Radio Free Midworld, a podcast about the Dark Tower series of books by Stephen King. My name is Cole Ross, and today I'm joined by Jeremy Greer. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Cole. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
I love what you've done with this place. And it's the new couch, new stuff on the walls, podcast studio's looking great. Thank you for having me.
Just a whole new vibe is what I was aiming for. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, the colored lights. You know, I thought at first I walked into like a Quake 3 demo from the 90s, but I'm really kind of feeling it now. So this is looking good.
Well, that's because it was on the red and blue scene. Yeah. you see, you joke, but I totally do that. So
I do too, man. I am all into the hue lights, just like you are. Like I know you have them all over your house, and I do as well. Like I've got the blue light in the corner happening right now over my 3 huge Dark Souls prints, and so feel good about it, man. Feel good. Just lean into it and just accept it. This is who we are now.
the lights have claimed us. So it is great to have you back. This is your first time on the Wolves of the Calla episode. How is your revisit to book 5 going?
It went very well. So when we were in the midst of book 4, I could not stop myself, and I just went ahead and read book 5. So I read this like 6 or 7 months ago for the probably 5th or 6th time,
right.
And reread this section for the podcast just to refamiliarize myself. I like this book, man. It's interesting because as getting older and revisiting this series, this is maybe one of my favorite books in the series, which I don't think I would have said when it came out. It's very much a Seven Samurai or whatever the Western take on that was, but it's very much that, but it's also really interesting. Like I can't help, like everything that happens is so exciting. It kind of feels fresh. Like it almost feels like a fresh start for our quartet.
Yep.
And there's Andy, the obnoxious robot, and I just love the fact that there's an obnoxious robot in this story now. So
yeah, I love the trope of the seemingly benevolent robot.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Tell me about your first impression of the book way back when, because you're one of the cooperative here who is who followed along with these books when they were coming out. What did you think of this as, you know, the long awaited departure?
I thought some of the off the bat, I thought the 19 stuff was way over the top, and I still do.
Yes.
Like there's a significant portion of this book which are the characters saying the word 19 to each other, and like if you just imagine, like if you did like a supercut, like if you could do a supercut of dialogue from this and just put all this together, it'd be the most ridiculous like audio book ever. So that gets annoying. There's some stuff that happens later that I don't want to spoil, where we get some kind of pop culture references almost, if you will, that I thought at the time were really dumb. And I don't know what it is that's changed, whether it was just my viewing of the book or my viewing of pop culture or my viewing of Stephen King, that I've come back around on that. And I kind of like the stuff that they're doing.
Yeah.
But overall, like even back in the day, I really liked the story. I just thought I was just so much in a hurry. Like he was kind of had said like, okay, I'm going to release these 3 books. Like we're going to do the ending. I almost got killed. Let's go. And I was just wanting to rush through it as fast as I can, which is not really the way to experience these last 3 or 4 books. You kind of want to take your time with them. So
yeah, it's
been much more exciting reading them in 2018 than it was in, oh gosh, I don't even remember when this book came out, to be honest with you. It had to be 2002,
2003. The last 2 books,
yeah.
6 and 7, came out 2004.
Yeah, so yeah, reading this, you know, some 18 years later is it's a much better experience for me.
Yeah, I am certainly getting very fatigued with 2 things at this point. Whenever there is a number, there being about a paragraph or 3 dedicated to people adding numbers up to 19.
Yep.
especially knowing what that adds up to as kind of just like a general clue more than anything. For like a meta puzzle, for lack of a better word. And also Roland's tick of whenever somebody is doing some kind of interesting exposition, like making a supposition or asking a question that I would like to have answered, Roland doing his little move on circular hand motion. You notice that?
Wow. That happens just in the couple of chapters that we're covering on this episode. Like that happens probably 5 or 6 times. Wants to, as Jake is bearing his soul to his father figure, the only father figure that he really has anymore. And, Roland just, doing the little twirl thing. I'm like, come on, man. Like, we thought we got past this, like, weird, distant, emotionalist, like, wreck of a person that you were. I thought we kind of had you reborn now. And then during Callahan's story, which, granted, recovering alcoholic priests do like to talk, so I get Roland there, but it still happens like 5 or 6 times, and you're like, man, that's kind of rude. This dude is telling you a story, man. Like, come on.
Yeah,
he's filling in the details of your quest. Come on.
and like I'm not certain about it as like a storytelling device either, because what it sounds like is Stephen King had had a pace in mind for this. He had like information that he wanted to get through, and outside of his control, one of his characters is saying, not speed it up, skip that, like editing it on the fly. And it is super weird and jarring whenever it happens.
They could, he's played around so much with the idea of a palaver or a storytelling session kind of being outside of time, whether that's a literal kind of magical thing that happens or even just a metaphorical, you kind of forget that time passes. You could just do the same thing, but even throughout Callahan's story, he's, it's approaching midnight and I've got to get to bed. I'm like, well, like, why? Stephen King, you're writing the story. Just make it 8 p.m., dog.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it takes to tell this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, option A, don't raise questions that you're not ready to answer. Option B, don't act like you're going to answer them and then blue ball us. Yeah.
It's really frustrating, and it's interesting covering these 2 chapters. I picked this because I thought it was a different chapter. To be very frank with you, I thought something else different happened, and hardly anything happens in these 2 chapters that we're covering. I think it's really interesting, like with the history of Callahan, like his story, and all this vampire stuff is really good. I remember, and this is again going back to when these books were first coming out, I remember reading this and just like, okay, I don't, like, I want to see future stuff. Stop filling in all of this past business. Like, I don't care. I want to see there's Thunderclap. Like, tell me about Thunderclap stuff. I don't care about like Salem's Lot Part 4. Like, I don't care about that story.
Right.
And I can live in it a little bit better nowadays, having gotten to the end. I think that's something that spoilers kind of help you with. Like, I know the ending already, so I'm not in a rush to get to it.
Right.
But it is one of those things where, all right, come on, King, let's go. Let's do it a little bit.
It's one thing that has changed for me, specifically between when I first reread this book when I was starting the show, and now when I reread this chapter, like 2 times, I think, one in audiobook and then one going through and making the notes. One thing that has changed over the past 18 to 24 months is the fact that I have read both 11, 23, 60, 63 or whatever. What? I forget. Whatever date Kennedy was shot. Yeah. 11, 23, 63, 22, 63. And Dr. Sleep. Both of which have like weird rough drafts in this section specifically.
Yes.
So it's very strange to see that like he had been knocking these ideas around and he decided to lay them out here, and then they became 2 pretty good books out of the back of it. But it makes this feel like weirdly inessential in a way, for as much as I enjoy it.
I could definitely see that. Like, it feels like Callahan as a character is mostly there to kind of fill in some details in between a lot of this stuff, and is mostly there to give them the MacGuffin, to give our quartet the MacGuffin that is Black 13.
Yes.
It's interesting to me, like, after That really stuck out to me rereading that 11/22/63. Like, what would happen if you could go back in time? What would it cause? And I'm like, yo, this is a Hulu series now. I'm like, what are you talking about? What would happen? James Franco did this. I saw it,
Yeah.
or at least I saw the first episode before I got kind of bored. So it is really funny. I don't quite pick up on the Dr. Sleep reference though. Which one is the Dr. Sleep reference that comes up in here?
So just the entire idea of an AA/addiction recovery narrative with a supernatural element where the main character is kind of hunted and pursued by these forces, specifically vampiric forces that are greater than him. That is straight up just a little bit of a dry run at Dr. Sleep.
I have to ask before we get into this proper, and I apologize. I've been so far behind on everything that I haven't caught up with Radio Free Midworld. I haven't even listened to Autumn's episodes, so that tells you how much I'm not.
Don't worry,
I'm behind.
Don't worry.
Have you talked about the TV show Castle Rock since it's come out, or have you watched it at all?
Is it out?
Yeah, they're the first. They released the first 3 episodes, and they've been doing an episode a week. It comes out on Wednesdays, I think. I think they're 5 or 6 episodes deep now. 5 or 6.
Shit, dog. How can I watch that?
Hulu.
Hulu?
It's a Hulu exclusive.
Oh, dang. I got Hulu. How is it, man?
It's really good.
Oh, shit.
It's if this had been coming out when I was in my like Stephen King prime as a like a teenager, like when I had all of this stuff kind of memorized about this like meta world that he was creating, I would be losing my goddamn mind over it because like it's every episode is filled to the brim with details and characters and songs and references and things like that. And it's almost to the point where it's a little overwhelming, but I can also just kind of turn that part of my brain off and just enjoy it as a show. And it's really tense and it's really interesting and it's just good. It's just really good. They've got the kid who played Pennywise in the new It movie.
What?
He's like one of the main dudes in it. He is just phenomenal. He's not playing Pennywise in this,
right?
But he's playing a quote unquote like dark character or whatever, and all of the acting across the board is just fantastic. Like I think you'll really dig it. If I don't know that it's not tied into the Dark Tower at all, so I don't know that it'd be a good focus for this show. But man, I'd love to talk to you about it sometime, like on an extended basis. So definitely watch it and come back and tell me how you like it.
Yeah, I'll touch base. We'll talk. No, I had no idea. I knew it was coming, but then I just kind of put it out of my mind until I heard that it launched. But now it sounds like I've got plenty to go through. So sweet.
Yeah, it's we're excited. We were watching it week to week, basically. Like every time. Like, is it out? Is it out? Is it out?
Nice. I'm kind of happy I didn't cancel my Hulu.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, now I have a reason to continue paying the $12 a month. Damn you, Jeremy.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
You were trying to cut down expenses, and then I'm just here to tell you how great it is.
Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of preamble, so why don't we go ahead and get started with the main episode. Last time we learned about not just the tale of Lady Ariza and old gray dick, but also the fact that there's a secret society dedicated to throwing razor sharp discuses. That's right. We got housewives odd jobbing all over the place. Then we heard a little bit about old grandpere Jaffords and his encounter with the wolves many and many ago. And finally, Jake learned what is going on, or at least that something is profoundly wrong with Susanna / Mia / the clown car of personalities that she has going on. And this begins the first chapter of this section, Took's Store / the Unfound Door, where Jake pulls Roland aside to speak to him, Dan Din, to open up his heart to him about what he saw in his dream.
This is something else that the Dark Tower series does over time. And when we start hearing words like Katet or Ka or things like that, they have kind of a mysticism about them. Like it's this weird ancient language that you kind of, I think for me, I injected a lot of interest into that probably wasn't there. Like it just inspired a lot of interest in me. So by the time we get to the point where we're talking Dan Din or something, I'm like, all right, okay, I get it. There's a lot of different words that kind of stand for dad in this. All right, I get you. I got what we're talking about.
All right, I can kind of see the etymology that you're working with here. Okay.
But I really like this concept, which is, there's like kind of an apprenticeship relationship between Roland and Jake to a degree where, he's Roland is the court and Jake is the young Roland. And this is basically, hey, I have a problem. I don't know how to deal with it. And I'm going to give it to you and you're going to solve it for me. And I'm just going to basically obey whatever you say. Like, I'm going to entrust that responsibility to you, which is kind of an interesting concept for a student teacher, I think.
Yeah. Just like, I'm going to throw myself at the mercy of your judgment, essentially.
Yes.
And I'm going to forfeit discretion. And specifically, like, the concept of Dan Din, it is an opening of a heart, but normally it is about romantic stuff. It is going to your father figure, your ruler, your direct supervisor, and saying, "Hey, I've got this. Please offer a ruling." Jake has no way to know this. Roland has never explained Dan Din as a concept to him, but this is part of Jake kind of coming into his own with his touch, right? With his psychic abilities. He is kind of uncontrollably gleaning surface thoughts and concepts from people around him. He's not explicitly snooping, but he's grabbing stuff.
Yes, which is also like a good thing, I think. Like an interesting thing. Like Jake, I like the story. Like, I'm obviously a big X-Men fan. I like the story of people's like coming to grips with their powers, and a telepath or someone that is adept with the touch, or that has the touch, or the shinin, or whatever you want to call it. Is overhearing things that they're not supposed to hear is kind of a trope in this thing, but it works really well when he starts picking up these phrases and basically parroting them back to Roland, and without realizing that he's missing a lot of the kind of subtext to him. And Roland is like, well, I'm going to go with it because I'm going to treat him like he knows what he's talking about, because I think that's the best way to go here. But it's really interesting to me, and I like that Jake is growing up a little bit in this.
Yes. Yeah, like simultaneously growing up with his role in the quartet, but also not regressing, but just acting his own age with Benny, doing like hayloft jumps and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that is giving him the ability to grow in the quartet in a weird way. Like his being able to kind of burn that childish energy off with Benny. And like, we don't see that in these two chapters, but having like doing those hayloft jumps or just running around and and that's the way that plays out in this story, I think is a really great moment for Jake. That great's probably the wrong word for Jake. Jake probably doesn't think it's very good.
Yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking.
Spoilers, bad things happen in this book. But it's I think it makes for an interesting character turn. This whole conversation I like, because Jake knows just a little bit more than Roland thought he was going to, and kind of talking about Susanna with all of these things. And Roland, it's always fun when Roland gets surprised by one of his quartet, and that's something that I don't think ever gets old in this series, and it works here, especially works well with Jake. Anytime Jake does something and Roland's like, damn, boy, how did you? It's always really entertaining for me.
I'm proud, but also, man, this is going to be tough to deal with, isn't it? Well, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those moments, Roland is very infrequently put on his heels in a combat situation, but very frequently when his quartet surprises him, put on his heels. And when Jake brings this to him, and doesn't just say like, "Hey, I'm really worried about the condition of the quartet," but like levels an actual accusation of betrayal, saying this wasn't just 3 against 1. This was 2 against 1. Like, you were going to keep it from me. Jake is drawing him forward and forcing him to defend his decision to like bide his time, to keep things from Susanna, to not force action on this when they are already dealing with so much.
Exactly right. Yeah. And this is a decision that I don't necessarily agree with. I'm kind of and when I was reading this as a kid, I had a different opinion. Nowadays, there's so much media that is built around characters keeping secrets from one another. This happens a lot in a show that I cover, a podcast, where these two brothers, just like, a lot of the drama is built around them not telling, like sitting down and having a conversation despite them living together in a car, basically. And it's one of the most frustrating things ever. So I would much rather see these people like, okay, hey, I know we're dealing with this, but also, we have to talk about Susanna going to eat weird rats at night. Okay, we have to have this conversation. Like, can't go into battle with the four of you if that's not going to be right.
Yeah, and like this gets very tense with them feeling out each other's boundaries. Like, Roland straight up says, like, short of killing me, telling Susanna without my approval, without my sanction, would be the surest way to break this contact. Like, just the stakes here are very high.
Yeah, and Jake, I think, understands that in that kind of natural way that kids understand how to, especially kids from the kind of homes that he is, are just naturally empathic to a degree. I mean, obviously he has the touch, but he's obviously been, that was the word that I'm looking for, like taking everything down a notch when his parents start arguing or whatever. Like he's obviously a stabilizing influence. Like and he realizes, like, okay, I'm the one that's going to make everybody better. Like, I'm not going to make this worse by telling Susanna without anybody's permission. But he's also like at the point in his life where he kind of wants to make that stand and actually wants to have those conversations.
Yeah. It's not just a need for rebellion, but it is. It comes across a little bit as like a not straight Holden Caulfield, but like just a desire for authenticity. But it comes from a very real place because he is very invested in the Khatat and the health and the fabric of the Khatat, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So Roland agrees. He says, "Hey, you know what? We will talk to Susanna either before we confront the wolves or before we confront Balazar's men, in either of these two fronts that we are fighting a war on. But we're not doing that. Like, I'm not going to do this because it is the right thing to do. I'm doing this because you have forced the issue, because you came to me, Dan, and
yes.
Like you have thrown you have ceded your discretion, put it onto me, and forced action."
Roland showing some weakness here, I think, is really interesting as well. Just basically saying, like, hey, I don't know if this is the right thing. Like, I really have no clue. telling this like 11-year-old kid who he's drug across literal creation, like, I don't know, man. Maybe I don't know. I've never been in this situation before. What do you think?
This is on you, bro. This is on you.
You could just see Roland like asking Andy, like, what do I do, Andy? What's going on?
Would you? I do not know. Would you like your horoscope?
Exactly.
Yes. A dark lady will give birth. Well, Directive 19. So yes, this is a very tense scene. You don't like seeing tension between Roland and Jake because you're always on pins and needles about whether or not Jake is going to say, "All right, well, you did let me die, but I guess it's up to you." He's always got that trump card in him, doesn't he?
Yes, absolutely.
So
guilt tripping little asshole.
drop a kid off a one train trestle.
You kill one kid twice, and look what happens. You have to live with it forever.
So Roland goes to meet Eddie and Susanna, the Jaffordses, and he does kind of a power move here. They've got the 3 gunslinger questions that they have to ask before they officially proffer their help. He straight up asks Zalia Jaffords if she desires aid and succor, instead of going to Eisenhart or Took or any of the other kind of big movers and shakers. Like, he puts it to one of their wives, and she says yes. So, signed, sealed, and delivered, we are committed to this.
Yes. I like the fact that he does this too, and I think Eddie has this conversation of like, why not let her to choose for everybody, right? Yeah. She's probably the most representative person here. She's just an average citizen. So why not her? Why would it be anybody else? And I think this is a good thing. Like, I think this is a good way to approach it, and it makes this process seem a little bit more real to me than because when you first start hearing, like, I have to ask you 3 questions, but I'm not going to ask them now. You're like, all right, okay, come on. I don't know why I'm so impatient with the Dark Tower tonight, Cole. I apologize.
No, that's fine.
But I like the fact that he asked just a simple woman, if you will.
Yeah. Well, so somebody who doesn't have concerns that are above or greater than the actual citizenry, right? If he went,
that's a much better way to put it.
If he went to Eisenhart, somebody who owns this huge ranch, he looks at not just everything monetarily that he has to lose, but also the fact that he has no real skin in the game. He doesn't have a kid. And also he doesn't have like a sibling who is ruined, who he has to take care of and watch die this horrible and undignified, protracted death.
Exactly.
Really none of the major stakeholders in the town have as much skin in the game as Zalia, right?
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah. So with that set in motion, they decide, hey, let's split up again. Roland's going to go meet Henchik of the Manny, check out that door, the cave of doors that was marked on his map. While the rest are going to go get some provisions at the Took's store. What do you think of Roland's magical bag of holding, his grow bag?
His grow bag. This is such a weird thing, because I think Roland says that he, there's not much magic that he has from his father, and this is one of the few things that is left. And he refers to it as a grow bag. Basically, he pulls money out of this. He pulls some silver, some gold, and some gems, and gives a handful to each of our quartet. And this is such a weird. This is the first time I guess they've needed money that I can think about. So that makes sense for the first time that we would see the money bag, the money grow bag.
Yes.
It's such a weird thing for him to have had this entire time and not used. And again, it makes sense. Like there was no point where he could have whipped out some gold and been like, all right, the lobstrosities are here. You have to use these gold coins to distract them. Like it wouldn't have made sense at the point, but just seeing it now is just some kind of random thing. And I believe it's never, ever brought up again. Like I don't think we ever see the grow bag. The grow bag grows nothing more for the rest of the Dark Tower series, unless I'm forgetting something. So
yeah,
it's such a weird detail, Cole. What do you think about it?
Yeah, so there's a whole book in this series, The Drawing of the Three, where about a third of it is dedicated to them going to dimension hopping lengths to get more bullets.
That would have made total sense to have a bunch of. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, like the scarcity of bullets is a huge fucking deal in that book. Never in the Gunslinger, never in the Wastelands, but like the fact that his entire gunna is soaked is a big deal for that. And so I don't understand why they're not just operating on Gunslinger credit. That it seems would introduce far fewer plot holes than this. Except for maybe there was a desire to add more of this magic element into the story. But I don't think it's a net gain, well, for anybody except for Eddie, who ends up buying a very nice shirt with the proceeds.
and then I get it, because like when they walk into Took's shop, one of the first things that he says, because he's a gigantic asshole during this entire process, one of the first things he said is, he's not a good dude. He says like, no credit. I've never offered credit and I never will. And they're like, no, we have money. Like we got coin, we have coin if you have wares.
Yes.
It's so I don't know if it was just for the whole grow bag as a setup for this, or it's just such a weird detail to kind of come out of nowhere and to, again, not go anywhere either. Like I would have liked to see him like squirrel away some tobacco in here. Right.
Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't grow tobacco. I don't know. I need to see the monster manual reference on the grow bag to know what it's capable of.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I need this to pay off later on. Right. Like just like, oh, he's had this and maybe it can only grow money. But like, I don't know. They spend a lot of time in our world in Song of Susanna. And like, if you produce some gold or silver, people are going to do what you want. I don't know. If somebody came up to me and said, hey, I've got some gold for you. I'm like, okay.
You'd say, I'm sorry, I'm all out of cocaine. I'm not the guy you're looking for.
I've got a magical bag that produces Bitcoin.
The blockchain bag. Took is not only an asshole because he doesn't offer credit on this like small farming community where he should definitely be offering people credit because that's the way that like farmers get by on stuff a lot of times. Yeah. But he also does not like brown people and he doesn't like animals. So he's checking like a bunch of boxes of like, please get out of my city, you horrible asshole.
Yeah, no, he straight up just out of like callousness, I guess, just calls Susanna Brownie. And then very satisfyingly, Susanna says, I grabbed this quote here so I could produce it in full. Call me Brownie again, Fatso, and I'll pull your tongue out of your head and wipe your ass with it.
Hell yeah.
Fantastic. Like later on, like Eddie says, yeah, I wish Detta was here so she could steal a bunch of shit from him.
Yeah, this is the kind of dude that deserves Detta's treatment, right? Like that's the kind of dude that really like deserves to have his shit stolen or to get led on in the back of a Buick 65 or whatever. This whole scene is really interesting because you wouldn't expect, like, Roland didn't really give them a lot of direction on this. He just said, like, go, and people were going to come up and ask questions, and like you just need to kind of be there. And they go and they buy their provisions and they sit outside and just chilling out. And people they start coming up, and Eddie seems like Eddie thinks like, oh, I hear myself giving like vague political kind of answers instead of just the hard truth. But this is a gunslinger's job too, is to kind of make people to soothe people, if you will, just to kind of get them used to you, so that you can help them. And that's something that the political nature of gunslingers, I think, is something that Stephen King has been trying to play up over the last couple of books.
Yep.
And to me it's interesting, but to me it also doesn't really gel with guys wearing guns on their hips that are trained killers that have ice cold emotionless hearts. And you know what I'm saying? Like the two don't work for me very well together. But I get it, and it's an interesting scene, and I like that Eddie and Susanna have to go through this process. Yeah,
and it's not that it doesn't suit them, right? Because Eddie has the gift of gab, as Callahan would surely say. Susanna has run into high society. Both of them are suited for this, at least from their old lives. Their new lives, though, have not pointed this and have not pointed them in this direction whatsoever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it makes sense, especially later on when they're just completely tired out from people coming up and asking them questions like, will the wolves damage my roof? Like, I don't know. There'll be water if God wills it. Okay.
I don't know, man. Ask Took. I bet he'll sell you some wolf roof insurance, though. He seems like the kind of guy that would get into insurance sales.
Man, fuck Took.
Pay me $15 a month and it comes by and, eat your roof. I'll replace it for you for free. Bad. This is while they're doing all this, Roland is hang out with the Manny, which I find much more interesting and kind of more what I would consider like that cool Dark Tower shit that I'm here for. I love all of this stuff with Heinwick and Hinchik.
Hinchik, yeah.
Is that what you said? Hinchik. I love all of this stuff. The Manny have been kind of brought up as like this mystical cult for I think most of the books. I think they started showing up in the first book, if I don't remember right. And they're just fascinating to me, like this weird traveling across multiple dimensions but totally chill religious group. It's really fascinating.
They're dimension hopping Amish. I think at one point they're literally called a Society of Friends. Like is sure like that is what they are. That they are semi-nomadic dimension hopping Amish. And they even have like people who are in. Then they have like Rumspringa, like the forgetful ones. Specifically, I think Zalia is somebody who has left the Manny tribe in order to settle down.
Yes, I think. Roland delivers a message for her, and it's like, because I think she's his daughter or something, Heinchek's daughter, and he's basically like, she just, it's like, he's like, yeah, I know, don't worry, she's going to hell. She'll go to hell after all of this stuff, and she know that. She's totally cool with everything. We're good.
Out of anybody else, I would probably chafe at that, but as a dimension hopping Amish, they have probably somehow stumbled upon hell and know exactly what they're talking about.
Exactly, yeah. Like if we don't do these 10 things, like we consider everybody else in hell, like, and it's probably just like a perception issue at this point. Like, if we do these 10 things, we go to the perfect land. Everything else is hell compared to that. And other people are like, yeah, I don't want to go to your perfect land. I want to hang out and have some kids with my boy. So. Yeah. Just
a different kind of life is what I want. Just a little bit less doing peyote in caves. would be.
Yeah, I don't want to travel through multiple dimensions. Don't make me, Dad.
I like my dimension, Dad.
This dimension is fine. I feel like we're in a Rick and Morty episode right now, Cole. How do we, we're just role playing. I don't remember the sister's name, but Morty and his sister.
Yeah, I forget her name too. I like that show. Forget her name. So, but yeah, he goes and meets with them because he wants to learn about this this cave. Recently, its name was changed from the Cave of Voices to the Doorway Cave, and he wants to go up there. Hendrik warns him, hey, the road is going to be upsy, which is a fantastic word for, elevation's going to change for the positive here pretty soon. So upsy we go.
Upsy we go.
But as they go, Roland starts hearing voices. He specifically asks, like, oh, are these the voices from Nar? Which is some version of hell in this. And Henchik treats it like very seriously. Says, don't jest, because a jest to you might be serious to somebody else. But yeah, this is definitely a fraught place. Like Henchik even says, like, these hills are loaded with magnets. There are many kinds of doors throughout these hills along this crescent.
Yeah, this is just fascinating stuff. And also, while they're walking up this is kind of an arduous journey on Roland's part. Like, he's having to, like, he's sweating and he's having to catch his breath. And Heinrich is just like rolling through, without even like a dabble of perspiration on his forehead.
Yeah.
And I like this whole concept of like this cave in the mountains, just like these weird caves full of weird doorways that go to weird places that are like kind of controlled by this, again, very obvious Amish metaphor. This is just so cool to me. I love this.
It's very good. And to Roland's credit, he's dealing with the dry twist. So Hendrik does not have to deal with fantasy arthritis.
I keep forgetting about the dry twist.
Yeah. We'll talk about what that adds up to. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it this time around. So this cave has a door that looks exactly like the ones that Roland found on the Western Sea. It's made of ghost wood. He sees the hinges attached to nothing. He even does the same trick where he walks around behind it and watches it blink out of existence. Except instead of saying the prisoner or the Lady of Shadows, this one has high speech glyphs that spell out unfound, just like what we can see on the box that holds Black 13. And Roland is also hearing voices from his past, his mother begging him not to shoot, and also Walter telling him that the room at the top of the tower is empty.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he kind of very quickly realizes that these aren't real voices. Like, he's not actually hearing people talk to him. He's hearing some weird echo that's been taken from his mind to kind of freak him out a little bit, which is very much in the Black 13 kind of the back murder bag of tricks that the Black 13 pulls out. And all of these weird crystal balls pull out. Like, oh, yeah, what's your most painful memory? Let me reflect that back at you for a little while. So.
Yeah. Let's just draw you in. It's fine.
Don't
worry at all. This ride is all inclusive. Yeah.
Black 13 is basically my brain when I'm trying to go to sleep, just reliving all of the most embarrassing moments of Jeremy Greer's life for the last 30 something years. Like, it's just that. Do you remember that time that you said a bad thing in front of a girl that you didn't mean to and you liked her? Oh yeah, let's relive that. You can't remember what you did yesterday, but let's relive that memory in excruciating detail.
Yeah. Remember that mixtape that you made that opened and closed with Everybody Hurts?
Oh God.
That is not from real life, because the actual song on the mixtape is too embarrassing, and that'll be a mystery forever.
Yeah, just keep that one quiet. Let me guess. It's Depeche Mode. It's something in the Depeche Mode family.
Depeche Mode would be far less embarrassing. Man, I don't know why I do shit like that, because that's just signing me up for people asking me that question. Like, no, but really, what was on that mixtape, man? So
just make up something to be like, it was precious things about Tori Amos, and I just didn't want to say it or something. So people don't have to know the real truth.
Defer and deflect. Yeah. Something that is sticking out to me quite a bit this time through is exactly how malignant Black 13 is. Something
Yeah.
you know, right, if you've gone through the series at all, and they go to great pains to tell you. But specifically looking at it with more knowledge of what the Crimson King is in the broader kind of metaverse, and also just kind of really keeping in mind that this thing is the Eye of Sauron. It's underlined and it works for me this time around.
Yeah, in a way that the pink ball, if it had a name, I don't remember it, but the pink one from the fourth book didn't, like, that one didn't necessarily feel malevolent like this. Like, it felt like it was, if you use me, I'm going to use you, right? Like, it wasn't actively, but this seems like it's actively trying to make everything around it worse. And the fact that it compels these people, this content, to want to have to use it is a very dangerous thing, because the whole idea is I'm going to use you just enough so that I can get to where I need to go, and then I'm going to stop, and that's a very dangerous game to play with something as just fundamentally evil as this.
Yeah, like the grapefruit was tempting and it would exact a toll on you, like it was kind of a psychic vampire. This, things around Black 13, not only is it a stand-in for the Crimson King and all of the collected evil and chaos that he represents and is an agent of, but also there is an explicit malevolence that it will send you Todash, and also that it is only by its will that it is not dropping you through a hole in reality to be devoured by creatures of the mist. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So this Heincheck tells Roland basically the story of how they found Callahan, and of like, we're led here by a walk, essentially, like a Sony Walkman that they found in the caves that had just like presumably Cole's mixtape on one side with the songs that are too embarrassing to listen to in 2018.
Do you have to
on the other?
Yeah, it's a tape recorder. He even asked, like, do you can Duracell? It ran out of batteries, and that useless fucking Andy couldn't recharge them.
I like the idea that, because Roland immediately thinks that this is Walter, and Walter was Martin, and could Martin be Merlin, that old wizard of old, and all of that. I just love the idea of Walter / Merlin being such a puppet master with all of this stuff, and just leading everybody around by their noses, kind of.
Especially as revealed at the end of the next chapter too, that he was up to far more than we ever saw in his earlier appearances, right? And just the fact that, I mean, Matthew McConaughey's he's out there recording little voice memos for people, recording voice memos for the Amish.
There's a thing that I like to get into when you start to talk about like supervillain plots of just how they go about like explaining the details of the operation. Like Magneto, like having to sit down with his like chief of staff and like plan out the details of how he's going to take over the rockets from the United States or whatever, and like Walter literally finding a Walkman and like a tape and like recording himself and placing it here, and like having to go back because the Amish dudes didn't go in the right cage or right cave, and like, God, these stupid Manny, they just won't, if they just go into the right cage, that's all I really want them to do.
They just won't take a hint. All right. So they were only able to close the door. So they found Callahan and the open door because of the hint they got on the Walkman. They were only able to close the door by closing the lid over the eye, over Black 13 in the box that Callahan had. By the end of all this, Roland has kind of demonstrated to Henchik that he is trustworthy, and that also he knows and respects the ways of the Manny. Throughout this entire section here, Henchik has only been calling Roland Gunslinger as opposed to addressing him by name. By the end, Henchik is calling him Roland, which is going to be very important at the beginning of the next book. That Roland is in their good books. This takes us to the second chapter of this section, The Priest's Tale Concluded, parentheses or brackets, unfound, which is a long chapter which kind of catches us up. It picks up where Callahan left off when he stopped telling his tale before, and then gets him kind of to present day. So Eddie and Susanna and Jake, they are just real tuckered out from dealing with the from dealing with the townspeople asking about their roof insurance vis-a-vis wolves and such. Roland gets some, which is very gratifying.
Sure.
Yeah.
That dude deserves to have a little fun in his life every once in a while.
He does, and Rosalita's a badass.
Yeah. She's just like, yeah, I feel like this is a good place for us. And just was like, come on, let's go in the back. Let's go have some good time. The relief on all of the rest of their faces as they realize that they are going to be able to nap in a bed for like a little bit in the afternoon before they get started is so great. Like Eddie is like, oh my God, this is the greatest moment of my life. And he's just like, I can't believe I get to take a nap in a bed.
How decadent. What have we done to deserve this? So they're all rested up, Roland especially so, because Rosalita rubbed him just vigorously and then softly, which is, she understands is the way to do.
Of course.
It is so awkward to hear those two old people hit on each other.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everybody's happy when there's an old married couple, but nobody wants to be there for the genesis of it, right? Like nobody wants to see the old people get together for the first time. They just want them to be married for 60 years.
Yes,
that's the
correct.
Nobody wants to see how that particular sausage is made or unmade, as the case may be.
So they all settle in to hear the rest of Callahan's story. He gets some cider. Eventually things get so real that he starts smoking because he needs something stronger than cider. The story picks up with him returning to New York to be with Rowan Magruder in his final hours. Remember that he made his way to Sacramento on the highways in hiding, and then saw a newspaper article about Rowan, his old boss, kind of, being attacked by the Hitler brothers, kind of these notorious serial killers in the New York area. So he goes back, and it's a fucking shit show. The description of Rowan and his condition with his cheeks torn away and his eyes poked out, laying dying in this hospital bed. It is rough stuff.
Yeah, this is tragic, and it's even more tragic because Rowan's sister is there and is almost deceptively nice to Callahan as he first walks in, and then he kind of realizes in the middle of meeting her that she's extraordinarily angry at not Callahan, just that specifically, but the entire, like, her brother's life having been wasted with this. Like, she feels like all of these people have just kind of sucked the soul away from her brother, and like he could have been bigger, like he could have done better things. Yeah. Which is grief. I think, like, I don't think anybody could look at somebody dedicating their lives to homelessness and treating addiction and people that wouldn't have otherwise have any way to treat it and think that they wasted their lives. But this is all grief, and it's all focused on Callahan, and he is just way taken aback by it. He doesn't know how to handle it at first.
Yeah, he thinks that she's reaching her hand out to shake his hand, like, hey, put her there, but she's raising it up to slap him. Like, she catches him way off guard. And, in her complaint, because Rowan had talked about Callahan so much, she feels that Callahan is complicit in this. They kind of like led him to run in these circles where he would be exposed to undesirable elements like the Hitler brothers, as opposed to kind of being in the ivory tower, following, getting his doctorate and writing his book, et cetera, in spite of the fact that, Rowan chose this life and nobody talked him into it. But you're right. That is grief. It is hard to hold that against her.
It's these kind of things that I think really make Stephen King stories as I think that makes people connect with them more than, because at their core they're not really horror stories. They're always character stories, and
right.
This person shows up, she has this moment, and she's never heard from again within the story of the narrative, and she's incredibly unimportant except as a kind of a side note to Callahan's story.
Right.
But it's one of the characters that I will remember most from the Dark Tower series because she's so impactful. It's just a testament to his writing sometimes, and his ability to create a character just kind of on the fly that is so good.
She's very strongly expressed, but she doesn't serve as a particular distraction because it still does kind of force Callahan back into a familiar role, which is, a priest. One of their primary duties, unfortunately, is dealing with and helping their parishioners process grief. right? And the fact that he is there to take that, it says a lot about his growth across this process, from Barlow kind of forcing him out of the church and his journey ultimately leading him back to it. It's a bit of a demonstration that he is getting closer to being ready to reaccept that mantle, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. So the sister leaves, giving him a moment with Rowan, and Rowan basically tells him, like, hey, the Hitler brothers are after you. Don't go to, capital H home, which is their place for everybody. They will be looking for you if you go there, but I didn't tell them where you were, but they were looking for you specifically.
Yeah.
Which that's terrifying, and like has to be extraordinarily guilt inducing for Callahan to, so this is literally my fault. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
They killed you because I wasn't here. Like this is your closing act. That's how that is how you and your sister refer to it. And not only that, but their plan worked. They drew me back here. And still he is not able to heed the warning, right? Like as after the nurses come in, after the very well drawn scene of Callahan being there as Rowan passes, having delivered his final message here, to his good friend, hopefully saving his life tonight. Callahan begins to wander. He is still drinking. He's still going to his bars. He goes and picks up a meal at Choo Choo Mama's, which is a place that the Quartet knows well. Because it's in the neighborhood of the vacant lot. That is a hallmark of this. Places where Callahan frequents, or places that he passes by. The Quartet has been, and all of them are real freaked out by the coincidence. But remember, Eddie said coincidence is canceled. But ultimately, he does not heed Rowan's warning. He takes a long way around and says, I just need to get a look at home. Pass by the vacant lot and see, but he is grabbed by the Hitler brothers anyway. Man, the Hitler brothers sting really hard in 2018.
Yeah, this is some horrible shit that the Hitler brothers about, because it's this classic problem that I have with Stephen King, where he just leans into these characters so much, and he makes them so over the top that you just. And I know he's not a shitbag. Like, I know Stephen King is kind of not a shitbag. Like, I read that dude's tweets. Like, he seems like he cares for America. But at the same time, it's like, do we really need the Hitler brothers that drop the N-word and talk about, like, how much of a, like, it's very much just, it's a difficult pill to swallow in 2018. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. In 2003, the idea of white supremacist serial killers, it would feel very much like an element of fantasy. But here, the things they're saying, I just, people sometimes get irritated when we take too political of a look at this, but it's like, yeah, like King has done a very good job of making these two killers very, very irredeemable, but like, it just feels too real right now. So wrong time.
Yeah. And that's a problem with, I think, the political climate that we're in general right now is, It's one of the reasons I couldn't, like, the reason I got Hulu, we were talking about Hulu earlier, was to watch The Handmaid's Tale. Handmaid's Tale. And then got a few episodes in and was like, too much. This is too much. This is too real. And I know it's fiction, but at the same time I was thinking, and I was like, I don't want to, like, experience this in the idea that, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
Like, I'm already really worried about a lot of these concepts. Yeah. So, like fiction does not necessarily have to be, strike that necessarily. Fiction does not have to be escapism. You can use it to reflect and process the real world. I think that is its most useful function in a lot of ways. Pure escapism, I think, is a trap that genre fiction either falls into or is unjustly accused of falling into. Here, though, I don't know, maybe it's just because we're recording it it's the year anniversary after Charlottesville. Like, who would have expected in 2003 that Nazis would be a thing again? Still.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So don't want to dwell on that too much. People chafe at that, but like that stuck out to me very very acutely at this, specifically with the language. So there are two of them. There's the big smart one named Nort. You will remember that the devil weed addicted person that Walter resurrected in Tull was named Nort. There was also the dumb little one, Bill, who is very excited to tell people that he owns Hermann Goering's Luger, when in reality it's like a 38 special, just a shitty little thing. But they grab Callahan, and terrifyingly, like, there are people on the street, nobody pays attention. They just tell people, he's had too much to drink, we're just taking care of him. He screams, they're the Hitler brothers. Nobody pays attention. They drag him into a laundromat and work him over, specifically his testicles, in a way that gave me it fired up those old mirror neurons for me. The description, they like, what is it? They pulled away his testicles like they were the shade on a window. Talked about the pain spreading like molten lead in his abdomen. And also the two of them bickering about the difference between the balls and the scrot. Like, you idiot, the balls are the scrot.
I remember some of my female friends taking self-defense classes, and that was one of the things was grab, twist, and pull. Like grab a man's balls, twist, and then pull down. Yeah. That's this is the closest I've ever gotten to experience anything like that. Like I got kicked in the balls like once when I was a kid, but I have been very protective ever since. And you
only have to feel that nausea once, right?
Yeah, you don't, and you're literally wearing a cup for the rest of your life. You're like, I'll just do it. I'm just this is who I am now.
I'm a codpiece. That's my thing.
Yeah, I'm a never nude for this.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all. I just like this was so it's such a visceral thing, and you just have that kind of reaction of like, oh god, this has to be the worst.
Yeah.
And these two idiots, these two Hitler brother idiots, are just they're so like stupid and dumb and just terrifying all the more because of it. Like the fact that they're doing this they were specifically like, they were contracted to do this by somebody else, and like they were going to have to mess them up a little bit. And they start arguing over the correct way to put a swastika on someone's forehead. Like, oh no, you already messed. At least let me draw it on you, draw it first, and you can just trace it. And I'm like, oh my god, these guys are terrified and so fucking stupid. What is wrong with you guys?
Set it in contrast to Eddie, probably half a decade later, when he said, when they are still afraid of these boogeymen, and just you realize they're just a couple of dipshits who barely have their own MO worked out. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So this is terrifying. It's specifically because of the lack of sensory information. Like, they take a picture of Callahan with a Polaroid, and that blinds him because of the flash, and that helps explain a little bit of the limited information once the cavalry arrives. They're about to kill him. They've already done just a tremendous amount of damage to him. But these two men, one who is overweight and has a ring that says Ex Libris, and the other one drops Yiddish phrases. Specifically, I think he tells one of them to go shit in the ocean, which is a very good saying that I would like to use. It is left to be a mystery. However, if it is a mystery, it's the shittiest one. It's Tower and Deep No. From the Manhattan Restaurant of the Mind. They have come here. They've obviously never dealt with any kind of conflict like this before. They have a gun. They're not afraid to fire it. It is bigger than Goering's Luger.
They're just firing it all over the place. That's the best thing about this, is that they were obviously, whoever put them up to this obviously told them, like, you have to pull the trigger. You have to be ready to pull the trigger. Yes. So the guy just comes in like blasting everything but the enemy, like just shooting the place up, which is really funny.
It's like, show them that you mean it. But I think it's specifically it's Tower, who does the whole, like, with your kids, you say, I'm going to give you the count of three, 2, and then they come to dinner or whatever. Like he says, okay, I'm going to count backward from 10, and then he's too scared to actually draw it out and like raise their tension. So he goes like 10, 9, 8, 2, 3, 2. He says it too fast because he's just terrified. He's wheezing and stuff. Like it's a real kind of comedy of errors. If they were trying to deal with anybody who was actually competent, as opposed to these two fucking dipshit Nazis, all of them would be fucked. But as it stands, like they save him, right? You know, they say like, yeah, we're responsible for your life now in the Chinese way. You know, just fucking Tower invokes some kind of weird proverb. They take him to the hospital, and they're going to try and keep the brothers away. And irony,
go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt.
Oh, I was going to say, and irony of ironies, Callahan ends up in Magruder's old room.
Yes, and I think the room number adds up to 19. While we're here, we can just mention that because the book mentions it over and over again.
577. Yeah, there you
go. Yeah. Has to be 19. Like we have to do it every single time, everybody. Good job. He winds up there, and then as he's he finds out later that while he's doing like some while he's basically recuperating that the Hitler brothers were killed, so like they're kind of permanently out of the picture, and which sets him on just kind of like a wander through the United States as he just kind of drinks his way through the back alley America, and like a very like a non cool version of On the Road, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Just like
it's a reprise of what he did earlier
that I like.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a little bit of lag there. What'd you just say?
Oh, that was my whole point, was just drinking through America. But yeah, this is exactly what he did earlier beforehand.
He goes about this wander because the heat's on. Right. The low men, whoever is after him, they very nearly succeeded. Let's get to the West Coast because New York is apparently a hotbed. He wanders, and eventually he ends up in, coincidence of coincidences, Topeka, Kansas, where he hits his rock bottom. He brings this up, and everybody kind of reflects on their own, or at least, what am I thinking of? Jake and Eddie reflect on their own rock bottoms. Jake recalls the moment when he realized what his final essay was for his English class. And Eddie remembers, being ready to slit Roland's throat so he could go through a door and get some heroin.
And surprisingly, we don't get that from Susanna. You would think that she would have some pretty fucked up bottom of the barrel kind of memories, but we don't get that. So we just skip right along.
Maybe hers is in progress. I don't know. But squeezing a frog to death doesn't seem like something you do when you're far away from rock bottom.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've been there and I haven't hit rock bottom, but so different people, different folks,
it's sport.
Different strokes.
It's sport for sport instead of out of necessity. Yeah. So, Callahan's rock bottom is being thrown into a drunk tank and having a seizure, and shitting and pissing himself. Just terrible set of circumstances. Somebody down the hall, and this is a wonderful little nightmare detail, somebody down the hall is listing names in alphabetical order, which is a very like David Lynch kind of thing. Like that is a background detail that adds up to nothing aside from like a person who is in a heightened state of anxiety would fixate on that, and it would cause them to spiral further.
Isn't this directly a Lynch thing? Like, I want to say it was something in The Return. There was a scene where a couple of the characters are in jail and one is just repeating. I'm rewatching Twin Peaks right now. Yeah. So it could be the first season too, but yeah, it's very weird and I don't like it. To sum it up, it just makes me feel so creepy and I do not like.
Well, the specifically in The Return, the guy who is all busted up and is constantly drooling blood.
Exactly. That's what it is. Yeah.
I'm happy that you called that out because that is also specifically what was brought to mind this time for me. So
excellent.
Kindred spirits in that regard. Also, Callahan sees more Bango Skank graffiti. So Bango Skank was here. And yes, somebody is singing that goddamn Elton John song that is haunting him. Somebody saved my life tonight. He is too drunk to realize that he is the one who is singing that.
Which has to be a special kind of drunk. Like that's a severe drunk.
To have that disconnection between kind of like your own just resentment or resentful inner monologue and the actions that you're taking in the real world. But after this, he gives himself an ultimatum. He says, "Okay, I'm going to quit drinking and actually live a life so I can justify the risk that my saviors took on me, or I'm going to kill myself." So he gives himself a year to do this. He says Topeka's as good a place as any to settle. He goes to AA meetings, he goes through all the motions, and he even picks up where he left off a little bit, working at a shelter when he is not spending time in the park where Blaine the Mono, the train, is settled.
That's exactly right. This whole thing where he gets involved in this shelter, and the shelter is offered like $1 million from a weird, like from a corporation, and like the Callahan even tells him like, "Oh yeah, we checked out the corporation as well as we could, and they seemed legit. Like they everything was working fine." But in 2018, just the idea of a corporation just randomly saying like, "Yes, we would like to give you $1 million. Come to this address, please," like would set off alarm bells all over the place, and probably should have done so in the 80s, maybe.
Maybe, especially in 1980s dollars. Holy shit! There's a wonderful moment where he says like, "Oh, $1 million, especially in the Reagan era," and Susanna's like, "What the fuck? Really? You are all of you joking with me? Is this reality? Oh my god!"
Are you all gaslighting me, or all you white boys gaslighting me about this? Jesus Christ.
But Callahan even says like, yeah, like just after being chased for nearly a decade, my alarm bell should have been up, right? But greed in the service of doing good is still greed, and it blinds you in the same way. That's not an exact quote, but it is the sentiment that is that is offered. And Callahan is also a little bit on edge because he's seen another missing pet poster as well. So they're on to him. And also he's been lured into this like sense of security. Like at the Thanksgiving dinner, he almost says, "I am thankful I haven't seen any type 2 or 3 vampires recently."
That's a way to get your 40-day chips taken away back from you real quick.
We're gonna hold on to this on a probationary basis. But the letter,
let's make sure you don't say anything weird about vampires, and then we will give this back to you a week at a time.
The letter that they get, it is from one Richard Sayer of the Sombra Corporation. We have heard this name before, offering this shelter and several others $1 million. And this brings Callahan to his death. He dies on September 19th. Yes. They're drawn into this building in Detroit. This huge conference room that is full of vampires and low men. He notices, this is the first time he's seen a low man up close and in full light. He notices the well of blood on their forehead, which is a wonderful detail about these things. We learn later that this is how they breathe because their faces are masks, and that is kind of exposing the roiling flesh beneath them.
Yeah, this is creepy and great, and I love it. Like, I love this take on vampires.
Yes. So they're like, all right, well, we've got you here. You're fucked. You're going to die. But before you die, we're going to let our vampire friends kind of get some revenge. Sayer straight up looks to the other vampires and says, "This man has killed hundreds and hundreds of your fellow undead men. So we're going to let you, we're going to let you just kind of take some turns." He also says that even if you escape, these vampires have AIDS, and you're going to be taken off of the board. Jesus. Yeah, I'm not sure about that detail, Stephen, if I'm being honest with you.
It's definitely like he was trying to tap into like the AIDS hysteria that was happening in this time period. Not when the book was coming out, because I feel like we were well on the other side of that by the time the books were coming out. But it's like during the 80s, and I feel like by 2003 or whenever he was writing this, like he should have been done with the AIDS thing. Like a vampire with is such a fucking schoolboy bullshit thing to say. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just
the idea of using AIDS as a weapon, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Um, did they get it from toilet seats, Steven? What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. But you know, I see what they're trying to go for. Like, even if you manage to get out of this room full of vampires, like we're still going to kill you after the fact. This could have easily just been weird poison vampires. Like, I would have accepted that more readily than having it be like a weaponized version of a very serious disease. But Callahan does it. He does the most expedient thing, which is just jump straight through the window. Callahan comes here with friends, right? Like it's to him and a couple of dudes from the shelter that come walk into this room, right?
Yeah, it's two other kind of members of the leadership of the shelter of Lighthouse, the shelter that they're at. And his alarm doesn't go up until it's like way too late, until the lock latches behind them.
So presumably he just leaves those two assholes behind while he jumps out the window.
Yeah, yeah. And also the fact
it's never brought up again. That's why I'm bringing it up. I just like they don't. In the rest of Callahan's story, he doesn't mention that, and I feel guilty for leaving that. Ed back there with the room full of vampires and low men. My bad, Ed. Sorry.
Like, wait. So the money. So are we getting the money? I don't care if I'm a vampire. I just want to help people.
Like, I didn't kill any vampires. I don't even think you were as real until 5 seconds ago. Can I leave? Is that okay?
I think Sayer even says that we'll spare your friends. We're only here for you. However, who knows if you can trust Sayer, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, in a room full of hungry vampires, like somebody's got to eat. So, like, probably you need to get out of there really quick if they're. No matter what, you need to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he jumps out the window. I like this moment where he has. Because I would imagine time freezing in this moment as he's hurling himself towards the window, and he's realizing like, oh, this could be a piece of reinforced glass, so that people don't, kill themselves like they've done and historically thrown themselves out of buildings. So he prays to God that it will break, and actually he does. He falls to his death and wakes up someplace very familiar to us.
Yes, extremely familiar, because he wakes up to the smell of old, dry, desiccated hay. He's actually in the way station in the Mohane from way back in book 1. Specifically, he's in the room with the pumping machine that is powered by the atomic slug, the North Central Positronics one. Where Jake got the water to revive Roland after he collapsed. In fact, it is so recently after they've moved on to the mountains that he can go out and see them as specks on the horizon. What's kind of funny about this is that Walter is here when, for the entire first book, we thought that Walter was so far ahead. Turns out kind of the chase didn't matter because Walter can move around at will.
Exactly. Yeah. Which puts another light, shines another light on that book. And this is a great example of how Stephen King can make previous works of his worse by continuing to write in the same series. It's not always like that. Sometimes he goes back and makes things better. But wow, that whole that great whole the Man in Black fled across the desert, the gunslinger followed. Like that whole book is about him chasing Walter, and to know that Walter could just teleport anytime he wants to now. By the time we get to the 5th book, it makes that book lesser to some degree. So
a little bit. And even if you don't take that extreme of a take on it, it double and triple underlines something that we gathered after book 1, which is that Walter was manipulating him and keeping him busy throughout that entire time. Which is like, I was actually really fine with the degree to which Walter was playing a game with him. That was good. I didn't need this to be set up as kind of a fuck you to the stakes in that first book.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's my main issue with it. Is it's, we've dealt with this before, and various video game media where sequels come along and make the original game kind of worse with extra plot points, and it's and it's something that I watch out for a lot nowadays when I consume media, and it's just I don't think authors can help themselves, and I think I would be guilty of this too. Like the times in my life where I've written stuff, like I could definitely see that urge in myself to like go back and want to change something and make it quote unquote better, and no, you just shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, do what you want to. It's your story. Like I'm not some arbiter of what you can or cannot do. But yeah.
No, I think that's correct. Like I am, so I'm fine with the result of it. Like I'm fine with this, with Callahan being brought to a familiar place, just not in that same kind of timeline and continuity, right?
Do you think that it needed, like, because all that happens here is that Walter shows up, like, here's Black 13 and kicks him through a different door to a different place. Like, did we need to come here? And I get that it shows, it kind of shows Walter as this interdimensional, like, puppet master who was kind of putting himself in these places at very specific times to do specific things, which is a very supervillain kind of, holy shit, how much does he know? How does he have the finger on his pulse on all these different timelines kind of thing? But it seems like there could just be a shortcut where you just put him in the caves and didn't have this scene in the. But at this point, I feel like, and I hate to even say the word, but it feels like Stephen King is wanting to call back to those original books to a high degree. So he's wanting to put more stuff around them. Yeah. Which works in some cases for me and does not work in others. Luckily, this is very small. It doesn't really matter over the grand scheme of things. It's because he doesn't stay here very long. He just gets kicked back into the caves, into the doorway cave.
Yeah. Because the unfound door is here. And what Walter is doing here, Walter / Martin / Randall Flagg, whoever, this Nyarlathotep figure, what he is doing is saying, like, hey, they're going to die in the mountains, if everything is set up. You're my contingency plan. I'm going to give you this, and, you're going to go and you're going to live, a rural life. You're going to feel this false sense of redemption. They're going to arrive if they survive at all, if they survive many attempts on them. And this is my insurance policy. You're going to kill them by doing everything they ask because you have this poisonous object, because you have Black 19.
Yes. Black 13.
Black 13. Whoops. I'm doing it too, aren't I? Yeah.
I can see why you would get the two confused, though.
Yeah. I'm just, I was looking at different parts of the notes.
Sure. Yeah. It's really easy to get those two confused.
Yeah.
So basically he wakes up in this, like, town, right? At the town, whose name I've already forgotten because I'm a terrible Dark Tower fan. And he
wakes up in the cave, Caliber and Sturgis, specifically, like, in the process of being kicked through, the box opened up, and just by the ball rotating in its box and looking at him, seeing the eye open up inside of it, he understands kind of like the forces that are at work here. He understands the Crimson King. And he's unconscious, basically from the terror of having seen this for 3 days before Henchik finds him and kind of brings him back into Caliber and Sturgis to, live his life, as this transplant, before he ultimately settles back into his life as a preacher.
Yeah. And I like the idea of this guy just, like, going to a different place and just saying, like, well, I've only know how to do two things, and one's drink and one's preach. So probably shouldn't drink because I've got weird Black 13. So let's start a church.
It'll be one or the other. And imagine the convenience when people already know all about the man Jesus. Like, well, bullshit. Yeah, that's
this is the easiest missionary trip ever.
So he settles into his life. The problem is, before he buries the ball beneath the church, it calls out to him. This is where we get the moment where he is he kind of puts two and two together and realizes the combination of the ball and the door will let him aim his travel. And he realizes, I could go back to the Kennedy assassination and maybe not just, like, see who did it. Maybe not just see if it was a conspiracy like all those crazy people said, but maybe I could stop it. And they kind of draw out, like, what if that sets worse events in motion? And this is the 11/22/63 kind of portion.
Yeah. Years before that book or that series would ever come out. And I just want to note again, and, like, this is not the first time John Kennedy has been brought up in the Dark Tower. Susanna has always called him, when we first met Suzanne, like, she was talking about John Kennedy and how he was her dad, I think, called him the last gunslinger. And so when she says that now, Roland's like, say true. And she's like, yeah, say true, dog. Say true.
I've been thinking this over for a while.
Yeah, it's something it's like you mentioned this at the beginning of the show, and it's something that's very weird to see a small detail like this left in this book, and then developed into a full thing later down the road. Like, that's really fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So in addition to that temptation, he has drawn Todash twice. The first time it is to get some closure on the events of Salem's Lot. Remember, kind of the framing narrative was Ben Mears and Mark Mark, the nerdy teen, moving to Zapatos, Mexico, to kind of live their life in hiding. He is drawn to them and Zapatos in the 90s, specifically to see Mark giving a eulogy for Ben, calling him his father. Callahan is not able to interact with them. He is still the ghost. He is still the cold draft that everybody bends around, but he kind of views this Toadash as a bit of an act of mercy, an act of closure that helps him put that chapter in Salem's Lot behind him. The other time is to be drawn to the castle of the king. He doesn't want to speak about what he saw there, but we're going to see that in book 7, and I can't wait.
Yes, this is going to be very exciting. It's been a long time since I've read book 7. I'm actually really excited to get back to it, so I'm pretty pumped.
There's so much cool Dark Souls stuff in it.
Yeah, I know. That's why because I don't think I've read it since I've really got into Dark Souls, and so I'm kind of really curious about how it's all going to. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there in a couple of years, I'm sure.
Yep. Next year, the show ends in 2019.
Oh, does it really? Okay.
Yeah.
You've already got it. You got it planned out that far. Excellent.
You know I do.
I'm sure you do. Yeah, I don't know why I asked that question. I know your spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So they basically retire, right? So he's basically like, I'm sleepy. I need to go to bed. This took a lot out of me. But Rond and his crew have to stay up for a little bit. And they pretty much put together immediately that the saviors were like the people that came and rescued him were the people from the bookstore. Eddie even says, like, do you think that we told them to do that? And it's kind of dismissed very quickly. And they're like, let's not even think about this. This is time travel at this late of night is never good. So,
yeah. So they really have no idea. They're contemplating time loops. But while this is happening, all of this confession on Callahan's part is kind of drawn this out. This chapter and this section ends with Susanna making a tearful confession, crying and saying like, hey, there's something you guys should know. I think I might be in a little bit of the family way.
Yep.
So that is big news. We began this section of the book with a huge conflict over whether or not she should be made aware of it. But she has put it together on her own, and now this is kind of going to force the issue even further as they try and figure out what to do about this, if anything.
Exactly right. I like this. I like the fact that you divided the chapters like this, because it's a bit of a cliffhanger of like what this conversation is about to be, because it could go into a variety of different ways. And I also like the fact that I was fully expecting reading this that, okay, Roland and Jake and Eddie are going to have this conversation about Susanna and not actually include her in it. So the fact that she just like took it upon herself to say like, actually, this involves me and is about me and my body, I should probably be the one to talk about it, is really good for me. Like I like that. I like this a lot better than any of the alternatives that could have been happening.
Yeah. Even just narratively and pacing wise, putting aside any rifle discussions about, autonomy and such, just this cuts to the heart of it, right? Like, okay, we do not have to have more conversations about who should know what when. It is going to become a conversation about what should we do, which is more satisfying, I think, because we've already shown the stakes of secret keeping.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, do you have any stray thoughts about this particular section of the book, even things that came before it? Summing up, just kind of final opportunity to speak about the book right now.
I'm very excited for the things to come in this book. I think this book's climax is one of the funnest things to read in the Dark Tower series. There are some things that on a reread I liked a lot more as an adult than I did when I was reading this as a kid. And rereading it along with the podcast has been interesting as well, because it's just fun to do that and listen to you and the other guest talk about it. The ending of this book, something happens, and again, we're not going to talk about what it is, but it makes me kind of hate, like I kind of hate what happens in such a way that I can't help but like the book, because it inspires such emotion out of me. So very much looking forward to the podcast getting there and finishing it up, because I want to hear what you specifically, and then of course your guests have to say about it.
Yeah. For me, this is the first time that I have kind of re-experienced Callahan's Tale after having read Salem's Lot. I never read Salem's Lot until we covered it for the show. So I was already pretty fond of Callahan as a character. Just based on what I saw in this book, the few times that I read it, but kind of understanding what this is an extension of, I really appreciate kind of having the full history and seeing, I don't know, like we cover an awful lot of this guy's life through all of this. Yeah. I think that, with a lot of characters, with, a lot of books, more exposure just kind of offers more opportunities for you to be bummed out by what you see. Callahan develops quite a bit between Salem's Lot and now. And I appreciate seeing that in the full scope. So if his tale is kind of the centerpiece and highlight of this, then this is very successful to me, kind of as a full expression.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me in this episode. This has been huge fun. Where can people find you?
It has been.
Where can people find you on the internet?
This place is at JG Greer on Twitter. That's where I'll retweet all of my podcast. Just a quick shout out over at the Monster of the Week podcast. We have started up another show called Don't Give Up Space Cowboy, where we are covering the Cowboy Bebop anime. It is I'm not much of an anime person. My co-host Chris is a big anime person. If you showed me this, I would have probably told you I'm an anime fan because it's so freaking great. And so you can check that out. There's a feed on iTunes called Monster of the Weeks Presents, where we're posting up our Patreon exclusive shows. We're posting up the first episodes of all that over there. Mm-hmm. So go check that out. Patreon.com/Monster of the Week is the best place to do it. Or if you want to stick with the Duckfeed stuff, come listen to me and Gary grudgingly get through the Avengers cartoon from the 90s. Did you know that there was an Avengers cartoon from the 90s?
Ooh, it sounds like you guys are just in physical pain going through that.
We're getting a lot of comedy out of it because it's the Avengers have battle armor, and so far we've gotten normal battle armor where like Hawkeye literally had like the A belt buckle and then fastened a different heavier A belt buckle on top of that as part of his armor. And then we've gotten so far we've gotten jungle versions of armor, underwater armor, and space armor, all different armor outfits for all of the characters, and they are all it's impressive that they've made them so bad. Like it's impressive. So go check that out. That's Days of Future Cast and on this very network. So, yeah. Thank you for having me. I love doing this show. I'm sorry I haven't been able to do it as much as of late, but I very much like doing this show. So thank you for having me back.
Yeah, I'm super happy you're here. For me, you can find me on other shows on the Duckfeed.tv network. Just go and take a look. There's probably a 50-50 chance I'm on the one that you look at. Additionally, you can watch, I stream video games on the weekends. I stream horror games under my Hexcrank Live label. That is at twitch.tv/DuckFeedTV. It's a lot of fun. Otherwise, ratings, reviews, patreon.com/DuckFeedTV. And just coming back next week and telling your friends, the usual grab bag of calls to action that we always fall back to. We'll be back next time with part 1 of part 3 of this book, The Wolves. We will see you then, but until but until next time, long days and pleasant nights.